I am incredible. Good morning and Merry Christmas to all.
Yeah, amazing. And Fernando, good morning, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was imagining the sun hitting my skin on that beautiful island. Wow. The backdrop on there, the pool, the ocean, the trees, the sky, totally artistic. And what a way to start an ecosystem merging Mastery Monday. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And Chaz, if you could light me up, computer's still not lit up, but that would be awesome. So here's where we are. It is the last week of 2020, the last week of 2020, and we had a fantastic meeting yesterday with Tink, the Mischievous Fairy, Adam, Fernando, Tom Flatico, extensively heard as well, where we were putting flags in the ground and doing a very fun exercise, which is like, hey, we just acquired, I want to tell you this, we just acquired a new company. Its name is Unblinded. And these guys started this and created some massive acceleration. They're in startup mode and did a lot of really remarkable things. And there was all sorts of things that could be optimized and grown and accelerated. So we just acquired this company. And so we're looking at every part of it, examining it, challenging it, accelerating it. And that's where we are. And I offer that to you to do to your own life in your ECD time. Every day, right? Actually, every week, every day, minor distinctions, every week and every month to create evaluation and not horizontal innovation, not like rethinking your very existence and your purpose in the world. Like we could think about those periodically when need be, but we don't think that day to day, week to week, month to month. We're at massive zone action. And so we're going to lean into some of that today. Now, that video, many of you have already gotten introduced to the idea that, yeah, we have the unique privilege of breaking ground on Buck Island. Brittany's Island is named Buck Island in the British Virgin Islands, and it is extraordinary. It is nothing short of extraordinary. We can bring Brittany back, by the way, next Monday, January 4th. Brittany, April, Anil Gupta are going to be on our What is Unblinded and Why Real Raw next Monday evening as we begin to innovate, and accelerate forward on those Mondays, leveling everything up that we're doing continuously. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. So trends, things. First, thank you. Thank you for being remarkable. Thank you for being incredible. Thank you for being on the Huddle. Thank you for being a kindred spirit. Thank you for your commitment to mastery. Thank you for being a leader. Thank you for confronting yourself. Thank you for stepping out. Thank you for being in love, connection, contribution, and committed to your growth. A little bit of fun, variety, uncertainty, and having human needs, certainty, and significance moving down into categories 5 and 6. Right? Thank you for all of those things. Thank you for everything that you bring. Thank you for everything that you share. Thank you for your uniqueness in the world. All that is very present for us as we enter today. Now, what is also present for us as we enter today is that video was not an accident. You know, it's not just because Anil said, hey, come to Necker Island. Anil said, come to Necker Island for a reason. And that reason is because he accepted our and Unblinded, my HUI, and said, yeah, come. And that was accepted because rapport was built with Anil. And that was accepted because Anil saw something at stake. But Anil wasn't there by accident. He was there because April and Richard Branson and these folks saw those same things in each other and Anil. And that happened. And all of the steps and the progressions along the way were built off of certain levers and certain dynamics. And what's truly profoundly interesting, as Chad, let's pull up the slide if it's not up already, is that this is how it works. And what we're committed to here at Unblinded and is the same thing that Brittany is committed to, and Buck Island, the same thing that Richard Branson and Necker Island have been committed to build everything he has built and that island has created. And it's the same thing that many others, including the Brontes, who wrote the incredible work Weathering Heights. that is considered to be by many one of the great acts of literary genius. The same things that the crazy skateboarders, the Z-Boys, created. Like, who are the Z-Boys? Yeah, they were some of the most incredible skateboarders in the world. And like, yeah, they came out of nowhere. And it wasn't one person, it was a group of them. And then, of course, there was Michelangelo. And Michelangelo came out of one of the great genius hotbeds in the history of the world, the artists of Florence. The artists of Florence. Now, what do these folks all have in common? The Bronte. Crazy skateboarders. And what they all have in common is they achieved an unbelievable, unique level of genius, an unbelievable and incredible, unique level of skill, just like Britney did. Because how did Britney go from 17, living in her car, coming from middle-class parents, to being on her way to being a Christian missionary, to deciding she was going to cause a different level of impact in the world, and becoming a real estate developer and succeeding wildly, to the point that the list price, I'm not saying that's what she paid for it, but the list price of Buck Island was $16 million. And now she owns it. So she, like Michelangelo, like the Z-Boys, like the incredible authors of Wuthering Heights, have something in common. And they developed a very unique level of skill out of something. And they weren't born that way. You know, the Z-Boys weren't all genetically born from a pool of talent that said, you're all going to be incredible skateboarders. The authors of Wuthering Heights, Michelangelo, all developed from an incredible and deep level of practice. And Chaz, if we could, let's share some thoughts from the talent code. We have that clip ready to go, Chaz?
I don't know if we have that one, Sean. The talent code?
Yeah, I sent you a text this morning. It's from minutes. Just check your text, and Nicole helped Chaz out with that. So there's about a 3-minute clip. I think that's from about 3 hours and 54 minutes to go in the book to about 3 hours and 51 minutes in the audiobook. So let's get on that piece, Chaz. And then we'll come back to that. But let's pop into our slide, the next slide. And this question is, how committed are you to mastery? And the clip that we're going to listen to from the talent code, and if we don't do it today, we'll do it tomorrow, leans into this reality. And the reality is that deep practice is what produced Michelangelo, the Z-Boys, the folks in Wuthering Heights. Brittany's a real estate developer and a person with the ability to go from low to yes to buy that island, because that was a wildly competitive and complex process to get the folks that owned it to say yes, to get the British Virgin Islands to let her own that island. Yeses had to be in place all over the place, including from people like Richard Branson and Larry Page, because there's a group of people that dictate who owns islands and what happens there. So incredible levels of mastery needed to be present. And Michelangelo himself, when people called him a genius and said, you're incredible, you're unbelievable, his quote from the talent code goes something like, if people understood how hard I had to work to develop my mastery, they would be incredibly less impressed. Okay. Now, what I would reframe that into is I'm incredibly impressed. But I'm not incredibly impressed by Michelangelo as a genius that was born. I'm incredibly impressed by the system in Florence that created him and so many other masterful artists. I'm blown away by the process that created artistic mastery at a level the world has never before or since seen. It was an incredible dynamic of deep practice created in a group. I'm incredibly impressed because what happened for the Z-Boys is the Z-Boys were surfers. And the Z-Boys figured out that if they wanted to get better at skateboarding, when the waves weren't like right and the weather wasn't right and they became skateboarders, that if they went into pools, like swimming pools, and they would scout for different forms of swimming pools that were empty in California, and they would take their skateboards into them. And in the intense, closed dynamic of the pool, they had the ability to deep practice, which included reaching points of failure, hyper-competitiveness, more massive action, more failure, more hyper-competitive energy, to become better and better and better and better at creating their masterful talent and neural connections in their brain. And the same things for the authors of Wuthering Heights, the Bronte sisters, who people said, oh my God, they were like these unique savant geniuses, except they weren't. Because their work was pedestrian, normal for little kids in the beginning. Like all the other little kids that write books and stories and things. And they kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going, rising in their mastery at incredible levels. So the point of the slide of how committed are you to your mastery is to fundamentally understand this. Lightning bolt disruption to the notion, any notion, that this program is about you running real raws. That is not what this program is. What this program is about is there's a formula. And that formula has self-process and influence mastery. And its subcomponent, as we see in the middle of the slide, is the 7 levers. Ecosystem merging, speaking engagements, sales meetings, sales, disposable income, contributions, fun and magic. But the question is, how do we rise in our influence mastery? Like the bracket on the right. There's like a formula. How do we rise in our influence mastery? How do we get there through deep practice? What is our swimming pool? What is our apprentice mentorship system from Florence, Italy, to create massive acceleration? What is that dynamic? How do we put ourselves into the swimming pool that's empty to become the talent hotbed, to give rise to the superpower of all superpowers, the ability to influence? And the answer is the real raw, because I didn't have the real raw. I didn't have the real raw when I used those 7 levers: ecosystem merging, speaking, sales, meeting, sales, to build everything I built. And by the way, it's how Tony Robbins built his companies, because he has FSRs, field services representatives, that go in, and what do? They merge ecosystems first together, and they have an agreement to go out and speak. Speak, lever 2. And they go out and speak in businesses and generate interest for what it is that they're doing. How does Chris Young create advancement and acceleration for his accounting firm? He goes in and does what? He speaks inside of law firms. What is Pete Vargas as a person who talks about the ability to create microphones or speak on stage? He doesn't say microphone on stages, but he teaches people to speak, because that's where you create relationships and sales meetings or sales with calls to action. All the real raw is a compressed swimming pool. It is a compression. It is a swimming pool, not a compressed pool. It's a swimming pool. The compressed area for deep practice. Now, none of it, and the reason there's a bracket around it as it leads into the 7 levers, is because the real raw is like 0.5. It comes before the ecosystem merging lever. It's a subsection of ecosystem merging, because it's a filtration system and an accelerant. for everything related to those 7 levers. It's the beginning of how we launch into it, because to get booked on a stage to speak might take what Rob Gill took in the beginning with me, which is 7 months and hundreds of touches. It could take a really long time. So the question is, how do we speed up ecosystem merging? How do we speed up speaking engagements? Footnote, how are you doing with your speaking platform? Your speaking platform is not your real raw. Your speaking platform is where you talk about what it is that you do. Are you up and running weekly? Is it a Zoom call? Or are you booking yourself to speak other places with calls to action with relevant ecosystem mergers and potential clients? We're going to speak extensively into this model tomorrow morning and tomorrow evening on the mastery call. We're going to pause it there from today with this question though. How committed to mastery are you? And the only way you will ever become masterful at the superpower of influence, which whether we like it or not, is impacting our money, time, and magic right now, along with what we do with it. Our superpower of influence, what we do with it is impact our money, time, and magic right this very second. What is your swimming pool? It doesn't have to be the real raw. Tell me if there's a better one. Tell me if there's a better system than real raw to your speaking platform and you picking up the phone and talking to human beings, or hiring somebody to pick up the phone and talk to human beings for you. Bella just had an outstanding real raw, and Bella's got an organization and leveraged it. Rob Gill has an organization and leveraged it and has outstanding real raws, which, by the way, we're going to tweak and continue to accelerate. We're going to be having underground real raws. We're going everywhere with this dynamic, right? But this is not about, real raw is not the program. It is one, I think, invaluable. I can't say indispensable because I built everything I built before I had it, but I was engaged in deep practice and created my own swimming pool called calling people, speaking. I was speaking like a maniac back in the day. Over the 5-year period, from 1998 through, actually go 7-year period, to 2005, I spoke at an extraordinary rate and number. And I'm speaking more than I ever did now. But back in those days, I was speaking, I would try to speak twice a day, back by 2004-05. And many of them were live and in person. Now we have the incredible blessing of online. So how often are you speaking, and do you have your platform to bring people back to? If not, start it today. Start it on Zoom, name it something, and I bring 5, you bring 5. The I bring 5, you bring, and 2 people bring 5 is exactly how I built Calgary Law to a 100-person law firm the second time. I ran events called Practice Mastery. I would bring 5 practices and often 10 because we'd always outperform everybody else. And we had other partners that would bring 5 practices and 5 practices. And sometimes they didn't show up. Sometimes they didn't do a good job. Sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes we had 35 practices. Sometimes we had 50 practices. Sometimes we had 7 practices. But it rocketed everything forward. And final, what you're here and committed to do if you want scale. If you want scale, build the marketing and sales system that allows you to control the flow of business into your world. And it's built through those 7 levers: ecosystem merging, speaking, sales, being sales, create disposable income. And we are going to anchor tremendously on agreement formation, because as I look around, we said ACD time the last time, the ability for people to get yeses in agreement form is suboptimal in the movement. Is one of the great levers that we can pull in our influence mastery. Your ability to go from hello to yes, not from hello to like each other, from hello to yes, in action, generate revenue now. And that's going to be an extraordinary component. So takeaways from today is the program is not the real raw. The real raw is a tool. Just like the swimming pool is not a skateboarding competition. That's an invaluable part of how acceleration happens. Sistine Chapel was created as a byproduct of Michelangelo generating his skill sets, his rising level of insane mastery. Like, that's what happened. But it wouldn't have happened without the apprenticeship and mentorship dynamics, and I highlight competitiveness of those systems in Florence. But healthy competition, fun competition, not like push each other down competition. It's like elevate and pull each other up competition by inspiring greatness and acceleration and numbers. So money, agreement formation, yeses, disposable income rising is the topic to anchor on through that system on that beautiful slide. Capture it, tattoo it, put it up. We're going to start to use more and more slides more consistently to make sure people are anchoring on things and see the Z-Boys, see Wuthering Heights, see Michelangelo, see Brittany. All is the same thing. It's all simple. It's ecosystem merging, speaking, sales, making sales, disposable income, contributions, fun and magic, all rising because your process, influence, and self-mastery rising. Real Raw is a tool to filter and accelerate ecosystem merger and to accelerate ecosystem merger, filtration and acceleration, and to rise in your mastery skill set, as is every phone call you make and all the speaking you do. Yes. Adam, final.
Sean, what became present is just the reason why it's so inspiring. And I love Rob Gill's story over and over again and what it exemplifies. But so real quick, how many calls did it take and how long did it take for him to connect with you?
7 months and hundreds of touches. 7 months, hundreds of touches in phone calls, text messages, liking stuff that I had online, commenting on stuff I had online, acknowledging me and edifying me in videos and posts of his. Hundreds of those action steps until I actually had a meaningful meeting with him 7 months later.
So let's just assume that all that never happened and he's not on stage at Chris Crone's events and all the amazing relationship that you guys have formed never happened. And today he decided that this was a relationship he wanted to create and form. How much time could he collapse and how fast could he accelerate that ecosystem merger simply by being on a Real Raw and or creating one of his own?
He can collapse that into a couple of weeks. So he creates a scotoma through the Real Raw and then the follow-up process. What I'm also present to is the absence of process mastery. The time blocking of follow-up exists for many. But it can be condensed into a couple of weeks, or eventually a day. Once you have the right edification, because the Chris Crone dynamic was 1 day. When Rob Gill got on the stage and microphone, which is just what the Real Raw is, with me, edified by me, in Los Angeles before UPW, Chris Crone said yes that night at dinner. And Rob Gill didn't even have an hour and a half. He had 15 minutes. But was edified by me. And in 15 minutes, with my edification, it led to Chris Crone saying that night at dinner, when I wasn't even at the table, because I was having another meeting with Jay Abraham, by the way. Right, that's how I built my relationship with Jay Abraham, same day. All that event was in California with a glorified Real Raw. That's all it was. And Jay Abraham went from ODS with Jay and the follow-up. So we had the event, which is like the Real Raw, and I was with Jay, Rob was with Chris, and that's how Jay Abraham ends up in New Jersey for the event and on my podcast and 12 different, one-on-one conversations or more that I've had with Jay. All those things transpire and occur. Is that what you're saying, Adam?
That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Rob Gill, for those hundreds of phone calls to represent just another accelerant within the formula.
And that is what we're talking about. So we'll pause there. How committed are you to mastery? Get on the phone. Talk to people. Talk to your existing clients. Ask for more work. Rise your disposable income now. Talk to your existing clients now. Build partnerships. Build speaking with them. It doesn't have to be people you don't know. Who are your ideal clients? Who do they know for more? When I built Practice Mastery, right, which again is a glorified Real Raw, right? Well, that's my speaking platform actually. So, but the meetings I would have for the Real Raw was a lunch at Capitol Grill. The lunch at Capitol Grill would have people, scotoma them, that became my partners before Practice Master. I get that dynamic. Instead of going to Capitol Grill and having the monetary, time, and friction of travel dynamic, the Real Raw replaces that. Like, you can still do that. But what I found is the Real Raw creates so much more openness, because eventually I innovated in my Capitol Grill things where I would try to create scotomas. But I wasn't creating scotomas the way we create them on the Real Raw. And people weren't putting their vulnerability at stake. There was still ego and friction at Capitol Grill dinners and lunches. So understand that it's not like the Real Raw is like, oh my God, like the Real Raw. It's just an innovative step of how do you go from hello to yes faster for ecosystem merging, and how do you rise your skill faster. Because when I was at Capitol Grill, and I would have people there, I have a private room at Capitol Grill. I was their number one client in 2019, the number one client in 2018. And I would rise in my mastery, and I would create scotomas, and I would have people want to partner with me to do speaking or partner in Practice Mastery. But the friction was so much higher than the Real Raw. And the friction was higher because of time and energy and money. It cost a lot of money to host those dinners, those lunches and dinners, right? But in addition, it wasn't as tight. I didn't have the format, which I was great at, and I built business. I was very successful. The Real Raw is so much tighter in creating hierarchical primacy. Like, I created hierarchical primacy at Capitol Grill, but let's say that it was at a 9.0. The Real Raw creates it at 9.999. For less money, in less time, with greater efficiency. Now, neither the Real Raw nor Capitol Grill, or whatever restaurant you want to go to, or whatever phone call you want to have, right? The Real Raw accelerates it faster. And compared to live meetings with people where you're paying for lunch, it does it so much more effectively and productively and efficiently. So you don't have to do the Real Raw to succeed here. You can just merge ecosystems and have phone calls and do speaking engagements, have sales meetings and sales. It just takes a lot longer and has a lot more friction. And you can take 7 months to end up having a meeting with somebody like Rob Gill did with me. But if Rob Gill had put together a Real Raw, put me on it, and had the professional football player they would eventually introduce me to in his office, all that from day one, it would have taken Rob Gill an hour and a half, not 7 months. And I would have had that meeting with him. That's the point. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow and tomorrow night. But any questions you have, let's put in the chats. Let's bring them to tomorrow night for sure. And in the groups, we are going to have groups on Tuesday and Thursday this week. I'm fired up. Can't wait to be back connected. And that's what's there. So, Fernando, final on any of this, and like anything present for you. Let's go with anything present for you that was made available in this conversation for you.
Many things. And I was patiently, I wanted to anchor on the magic. So what I'm hearing you say is that the Real Raw Open is the 0.5 of 7 levers. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's not the foundational point of this program. It's not even the foundational point of the 7 levers. It's simply an entry point. And I'm certainly not minimizing or diminishing the power and magic that is the Real Raw Open, just putting it in its proper place. It's like not the end all. It's simply the beginning. And just to really create the contrast, and I believe you said these words, so please, correct me if I'm misquoting, that the goal of the Real Raw Open is to bring people to your speaking platform. I don't believe you're saying the Real Raw Open is not a speaking platform. I do believe you're saying that outside of the Real Raw, there's a speaking platform. So for everyone, if you had to give them something to model, what would you say is Unblinded speaking platform based on the equation you just created?
Yeah, Unblinded speaking platform is Monday night. What is Unblinded and why the Real Raw? That's our speaking platform. So we're taking people from Real Raw to that.
So final example. Right. So let's say I was in real estate, right? And that
by the way, that replaced Capitol Grill lunch with the ecosystem merger lunch that took people to practice, mastery, inviting an event, right? Which is the equivalent of what is Unblinded and why they're raw. Or going back in time, when I did my presentations in front of the Chiropractic Society, that was my speaking platform. Go to Chiropractic Society and speak there. That's what I did in 1999. That was my speaking platform. We eventually became counsel to them, so that was our platform. And we had access to all of those people. Back to you, Fernando.
Thank you. And just final, I know we're a little over, so thank you everyone for staying
And
with
by
us.
the way, ready? Guess what? Guess what Peter Swain's speaking platform is?
I don't know.
Unblinded.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's smart. So Peter Swain turned Unblinded into his speaking platform. We built it for him. And he edified, it was nice. But like it became his speaking platform. That's not true.
That's certainly not true.
Yeah. So, right? Like, so he edifies, he gets some airtime, and he is to Unblinded in ways what I am to Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership, sort of, right? It's a platform where I go on, I edify, I say certain things, I get airtime, and relationships get built.
Understood and received.
Right. So back to you, Fernando.
Thank you. So just rapid fire, like yes, no. So if I'm in real estate, if I'm hearing you correctly, if I'm in real estate and my goal is to sell homes, get listings, et cetera, I do the Roar Open, I do all those things, and then I create like a summit, a weekly summit, whatever we want to call it, where I talk about real estate. Would that be a yes?
Yes, of course. Now, I mean, going back to Peter though, when Peter posts in the chat, which we got to talk about, right? But when Peter posts in the chat, hey, I'm doing my thing at this time and that time, he's turning the chat into a speaking engagement during the huddle. Right? So he's taking people from here to over there and then creating sales meetings and sales with them.
Correct.
Does that make sense, Fernando?
It does make sense. So for everyone, so you run the Roar Open and then you invite them to a speaking platform that you can partner with people where the Bring Five is to bring guests to learn about what you do for a living. Just to encapsulate it in a sentence, would that be a properly positioned sentence?
That would be an absolutely properly positioned sentence.
Okay, so I'll pause there, and I want to spend the rest of this week highlighting that and agreement formation, because that right there, that's magic for everyone. Because one of the common questions was, but we never talk about what we do. How do we turn this into sales? Yes, is you use the magic.
Well, by the way, and I'm being careful with my cursing, that's absolute bullshit. Like, that's crazy. So those words are said, somebody is in fake confusion and they are lying to themselves. Because the amount of times we've said this has been more than 50. I'm not accepting that frame. That's fake confusion, and that's people. I've told people continuously, build your speaking. We had modules and group sessions and individual sessions. Like this is now what I said this morning on the group call, or internal Unblinded call is, we are Miracle on Ice, we are Florence, we are the Z Boys, we are Wuthering Heights, we are the New England Patriots winning Super Bowls. We are the Emerson Cabo football team with Coach Slazak from 1984, our freshman year. 1987 was my fall senior year. That's who we are. We're not stepping in a false frame. There's just no space for it. And like, that's not in service of you. So to say that is utterly ridiculous. We have said countless times, like everything I said today, I've said 50 times. So we are looking to cause acceleration, right? With people like Joe Hagan, kill railroads. Don't judge 20. I'm saying these things now, lovingly calling people out. Like, still railroads now, don't go judge on railroads. Do not be running around judging on railroads all over the place. TTP, same thing. And take them to your speaking platform and make things happen. And if we're going to use Unblinded as a speaking platform of yours, let's make sure we have an agreement. So you're adding a certain level of value that we're clear about, and or we have a financial agreement on the back end. Like, so we're being like, we're avoiding like discomfort and weirdness, and we're stepping in and leaning in, because there's nobody who understands these dynamics on the planet better than me. Right? So we're making sure we have integrous relationships, airtight. The huddle goes offline. The huddle goes offline January 2nd, or whatever the first Monday is after January 4th. The huddle is people only in the programs. That's it. We've given enough value for free to the world, and it is time to create massive integrity going forward. So for people who are not in the programs, right, there is no access to the huddles anymore. We're also going to go on a massive campaign of building a variety of different online groups in different ways. I am 5 wide receiver set because I've had a few days to think. I've had some time on airplanes. I love you. I love this. And 2021 is going to be mind-numbing. Not hyperbolic, but we're going to create integrous partnerships. We're going to create massive acceleration, and we will cause the elimination of all fake confusion. And we are the Soviet Chess School. We are the 1980 Miracle on Ice team. We are Florence. We are one, and we are unified. And this is not a democracy. I'm not looking for votes. I'm not looking for opinions. This is not a social network. This is the 1980 Miracle on Ice, and I'm Herb Brooks. So you can play on this team or complain about it and not like it and go create your own team. But if you're on this team, we're going to live and operate in one system of causing massive acceleration. One. This is not a democracy. It is not a social network. This is the Soviet Chess School meets the Miracle on Ice meets Florence. It's apprenticeship, mentorship with rules and structure and acceleration as a peak performance team. That's what we are. Love everybody unconditionally forever. And Unblinded has boundaries. So let's rock and roll. Love you all. And Chaz, hit it.